Prynhawn da, everyone. My name is Susan Davis and I'm here with my colleague Dr. Rhiannon Packer, and we're going to talk to you about our project all around supporting young, quiet, shy and anxious children in the primary school. Next slide, please. So the overview of the presentation is basically we're going to give you the rationale with regards to the research project. We're also going to talk a little bit about who are quiet, shy and anxious children. And just to kind of put the context on this, we think that there are around 1 in 3 in every classroom in Wales. So that's that's the kind of what we're looking at as the number of those children. We're going to be sharing some findings from our project, and we're going to be exploring recommendations from the study and the pedagogical implications. Thank you. I'll pass on to Rhiannon now for the next slide.
Diolch, Sue. So the first question that we had was, who are these children and why do they need some support or intervention? So these are the children, as practitioners, perhaps we forget about. I think one example is if you can think about listing all the children in your classroom, those children that you remember at the end tend to be these quiet, shy and anxious children. So they're the children that you tend not to notice in the classroom. They carry on with their work. They very rarely ask questions, if ever. You know, there's a danger that we might forget who these children are and we don't notice them, and therefore we're so busy in our everyday lives that we don't see them and we don't provide the support, or they don't ask for support when they need it. These are also children who worry about any changes, transition, if there's a change in teacher or they're asked to do something that's unexpected, they can be very reluctant or hesitant to do so. And there's some research that has identified that they have unique and academic and social challenges which they face in school, and they can experience additional stress if we ask them to do something that maybe brings them into the limelight or they don't feel comfortable with. So we thought that it was important to maybe identify those children and to maybe to provide them with some support to enable them to reach their potential. Next slide, please.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit now about sort of the characteristics of the shy child. And I think to sort of set out here, one of the things that we're very keen to sort of to state within this research is that it's not a negative to be shy, and I think that from doing this research we've seen the unique qualities that quiet and shy children have and what they can actually bring to the primary classroom. So if we're looking at Caerdydd here, they say shyness is a temperamental trait characterized by wariness, fear and self-consciousness in social situations, and we very much have found that to be the case. In school, child shyness is associated with a wide range of socio-emotional difficulties. So shyness becomes an issue if the child is distressed by it, basically. And if we go on to the next slide, which talks about anxiety, it's interesting to point out here that anxiety is a normal part of childhood, but it can become a problem when the child identifies as a problem. So when it gets out of proportion and impairs everyday life or their development. Next slide, please. Over to Rhiannon.
So the research aims that we had as part of this project was to explore whether a short-term intervention had an impact upon the engagement of these quiet, shy and anxious children in the mainstream classroom. So our first question was to explore what impact would a short-term intervention have upon the children themselves, and whether it had a wider impact in terms of their engagement in the mainstream classroom. So the idea was that the practitioner would take small groups of children identified as quiet, shy and anxious, deliver this intervention over a short period of time, and then to see whether that had a longer term impact upon behaviours and engagement within the classroom. I'll pass over to Sue. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Okay, so just a few points here to share with you, and these were some of the research that we discovered. So shyness can develop in response to environmental stimuli. So I think children who are quite quiet, shy and anxious are also usually very highly sensitive, so they react to situations within the classroom, and that can be an issue as well. Shyness is negatively associated with peer and socio-emotional difficulties, suppressing engagement in the classroom. So your quiet, shy, anxious children don't often speak up in the class. They're the ones that they quietly get on with things, and they're the ones that you usually find self-directing their studies. And because they don't give the class teacher any issues and problems, they can be sort of marginalised, and so at the expense of the more vocal children. And I think that's something that we need to be aware of and to negate. There's a connection between maternal shyness and child shyness. So one of the things that we found is that quiet children have quiet parents. Not always the case, but it can be a factor. There's a correlation between shy children and peer rejection. So often the more vocal children are the ones with the bigger friendship groups. The quieter children are often on the periphery of groups. So we need to look at ways we can get them into that more kind of popular group, if you like. And also there's the idea that there's a kind of a correlation with the teacher sensitivity, because again the teacher is more focused on the more vocal children, and thus they're less sensitive to the quiet children. There's also a longer term impact on engagement and attainment. Often the quieter children, because they can't get their voices heard within the busy classroom, they give up, so they withdraw from offering answers. So there's quite a few issues and things around that. And as we found, we very much subscribed to Crozier's idea of the fact that quiet, shy and anxious children need specific interventions to support them, and we've proved that hypothesis through our research. So thank you. Next slide, please.
So just to give you some background information to the project that we conducted, it was a continuation of Sue's Ed.D research, which looked at the effectiveness of short-term intervention on quiet, shy and anxious children. So Sue had developed a programme entitled Special Me Time Programme, and that was aimed at reception to Year 2 pupils, and then we developed the Quality Me Time, which was aimed at Year 3 to 4 pupils, and this was available bilingually to practitioners, and it also had links to the national curriculum and also the curriculum for Wales. The idea was that it was a 6-week intervention programme, that practitioners identified pupils as quiet, shy and anxious. So the practitioners identified them, worked with small groups of 4 to 6 children, and it had to be a sequential session, so 6 hour long or thereabouts over 6 weeks without any break. So the idea is that we had 2 iterations during the period of research that we had available, January to February half term as one, and then there was the option, if practitioners wanted to do it from February to half term, to do another iteration of the programme. Next slide, please. So we had a number of schools take part. We worked in collaboration with Show Racism, the Red Card, and we used their database to access schools. So we sent out an email asking whether schools would be interested in participating. And we had 68 schools from across Wales to sign up. 43 of them were English medium and 25 were Welsh medium. So initially they expressed an interest, and then we invited them to a meeting where we explained what we were asking them to do. We provided them with a short video about our rationale for the project, how it worked, and what we were asking them to do if they committed to the project. And then we sent out further information, guidelines for practitioners, session plans, observation sheets, and we asked them to fill in a baseline score for the pupils that they had identified at the beginning of the programme, and then to complete it again at the end of the programme. And then we asked them to send all that data back to us after they'd completed it. In addition, we also organised regular contact meetings with those involved, and we shared good practice as we were going through the programme, and I identified areas that might have been of concern, and the practitioners themselves found that useful, so they drew upon each other's ideas about how to develop some of the sessions, etc. Bearing in mind at this time COVID was quite there was a lot of COVID about, and schools were working in bubbles. So some practitioners were limited in what they could do because they were working in quite strict environments. All parents had given consent for their child to take part in the sessions, and the programmes were delivered to 87 children in groups of about 4 to 6. Next slide, please.
Okay, so the methodology was a mixed methods research, and we used various data to get to our findings. So we very much looked at practitioner findings. We asked practitioners to complete a diary, to complete reflective sheets when they had undertaken a specific special me time or quality me time session. We looked at the baseline evidence, so we took a baseline before the children were engaged with the special me time or quality me time programme, and we took a baseline at the end. We also asked the practitioners to evaluate their sessions and the programme, and we also undertook some specific targeted interviews with the practitioners. And interestingly, we did find that the practitioners who were more emotionally literate themselves were much more focused on the children rather than on the specifics of the programme, because some of the practitioners got kind of tied up with the fact that it was a lesson plan, and they were looking at the evaluation as a lesson rather than the children's individual needs. And I think if we run the programme again, we're going to focus a little bit more in on that. We also found that one practitioner who was very, very emotionally literate was a quiet, shy and anxious person herself, so she very much kind of this really resonated with her, and I think that was something that again was a thing of interest. So when we had all the projects together, the research projects together, we then analysed the materials to find common themes. So next slide, please. So the way we recruited the participants, we worked in conjunction with Show Racism, the Red Card, and we were really interested in capturing information about Black and global majority pupils. This research round, we didn't have that many pupils from those backgrounds. When I've done this research previously, it was a bit of a different focus, and I found that it really supported boys and boys with English as an additional language. We didn't have that focus so much this time around. There was an initial Qualtrics questionnaire as well to practitioners, and when we undertook the training sessions, there was a little video that Rhiannon and I prepared, which was bilingual, and the participants had access to the video, and they also had access to the handbooks. There was a specific handbook for special me time and one for quality me time. They were also able to email us whenever they had any queries, and we did have some really useful focus groups and some sessions with them. We also had a follow-up online Q&A as well, and we had some post-interview discussions. So there was a lot of sort of cross-pollination across the various methods of data collection, and we managed to get some really rich data from that. Thank you. Next slide, please.
So as Sue mentioned, the activities themselves weren't important. It was about the responses of the children to the resources that had been created for them. And they were designed with the following aims in mind: to enable those children to vocalise their feelings and their needs, to support them in enabling and in being able to access general classroom opportunities, and to help them engage with everyday communication, and also for them to develop and maintain friendships. So the idea was that they were working in these small groups, that became comfortable in those small groups, and then those skills or that confidence that they were developing, they could transfer into the mainstream classroom. Next slide, please. So this table here just gives you an indication of the responses that we had to the programme from across Wales. And as you can see, we had 43 English medium schools taking part and 25 Welsh medium schools. Next slide, please.
Okay, I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to just skip through these. So this is just a pictorial description of the overall number of schools taking part. So you can see the difference there between the English medium schools and the Welsh medium schools. Schools self-selected to come onto the programme, so we were just very grateful for the schools that were involved. And as Rhiannon said earlier, we were working really completely in a pandemic, so we were very fortunate to have the data back that we actually did. Next slide, please. This slide gives a comparison in relation to the special me time returns on the baselines and the quality me time returns. And I think without going into too much statistical detail, you can see that on average at the bottom, every child who undertook the special me time or the quality me time programme had an increase in baseline scores. So thus their social and emotional development, their confidence, their ability to make friends, etc., was all improved by the programme. Any time I've ever carried out these programmes, we've never had children go back on their baselines. They've only ever improved. We've only seen an improvement. And again, just bearing in mind the fact that this is a really short, sharp intervention. It's nothing major. It doesn't really cost anything apart from teacher time and having a spare room that the children can be taken to. And the benefits are just immense, really. In relation to the children's confidence and their social and emotional development. So it really is very, very simple, very effective, quick fix, which makes a huge difference to these children who previously haven't really had a lot of focus put upon them. They're not in any special additional learning needs groups, etc. And I think the next slide just sets out some of the themes which have emerged from the data. So following the programme, the young children they had better interaction within the mainstream classroom. There was an improvement in them feeling less anxious. There were improvements in children expressing themselves, so children were much more likely to vocalise their feelings inside the groups and outside in the mainstream classroom. There was an increase in positive emotions. There was an increase of confidence and development of social skills and self-esteem. And the main one was there was increased practitioner awareness. And when we had practitioners saying, well, I never even thought about needing to have a special intervention for my quiet children. So I think really that was a significant one. So, and also obviously the fact that the impact during the lockdown and COVID-19 were that children were being more isolated, so they really needed this support. Next slide, please.
So here are just some of the comments that practitioners made in their feedback to us at the end of the programme. I'm not going to read them out, but they are all very positive. And even one practitioner noted that a parent had come up to her and had said that her child had been far more confident outside of school, as well as seeing improvements within school as well. Next slide, please.
So more or less to finish off, there were some recommendations that came out of the project. Practitioners told us that we needed to put more warm-up activities for the pupils, because sometimes it took them till about session 2 to kind of get involved with it. We need to be thinking about explaining to the quiet, shy and anxious children why they're participating, so give them a little bit more autonomy. The programme does allow practitioners reflection time, which is really important, and time to consider the quiet, shy and anxious children they've got in their classrooms in a way that they may not have done before. The quiet, shy and anxious children need quiet time. They find it very overwhelming to be in a big, busy mainstream classroom, and that time away from it was really valuable for them. And again, as I said earlier, we really do want to stress this. Being quiet or shy should not be seen as a negative. So those children shouldn't be stereotyped of, oh, they're very quiet, they're very, that's not a bad thing. And sometimes it's a good thing, especially in the mix of all of those children in the classroom, especially when they're working in teams and things. So that's the end of our presentation. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, everyone. And have you got any questions for us?
Okay, so thank you both, Sue and Rhiannon. That was really interesting. We do have actually some questions, but I have got something to ask you, which is, what was it like for the children being identified for the intervention, children who don't particularly like being identified? I'm just curious to know what that experience was like and how you managed it.
Do you want me to do that one, Rhiannon?
Yeah, and I can add as well.
Yeah, okay. I think that the main thing was just working sensitively with the children. I think they're very aware that they're quiet and shy and anxious. It's not something that's not news to them, and I think they really welcomed having that time outside the mainstream classroom and going off into their groups. And maybe session 1 they were a little bit, what's going on? But by the time they got to session 2, they'd really, really engaged with it. And interestingly, they made friends within those groups which they hadn't previously had in the mainstream classroom. So they actually kind of got together with other quiet, shy and anxious children and had a little bit of a bonding. And that was lovely. I'll pass over to Rhiannon.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Sue. I think there was an initial bemusement about why they'd been identified and what was going to happen. But I think most of the teachers said that they'd done it in quite a sensitive way. And once the children realised what the activities were about and what the activities involved, they sort of got used to the idea and quite enjoyed the fact that they were being taken out of that very busy, noisy classroom to a maybe quieter place where they were given a bit more time to interact and to begin to get to know their teacher. In many of the cases, the teacher took them out, and some of them were saying for the first time they actually had a conversation with those pupils where they'd never had that opportunity before.
Okay. So as Sue says, please do post your comments and questions and I'll read them out to you. And we do have a couple of questions actually. So there is one question about the emotionally literate practitioners that you said that you came across. So the question is, in what way were these practitioners different? What would be the training implications? What would be the training implications for staff if a school wanted to implement these interventions, thinking about these kind of more emotionally literate practitioners who are kind of better at delivering the intervention?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think most early years practitioners do tune in to children, and I think what happens with the quiet, shy and anxious children, because they are quiet, shy and anxious and they don't really raise their head above the parapet, often in a busy classroom of 30 children, that they just blend in and you don't recognize them. I think the practitioners who were quiet, shy and anxious tuned into those children because they saw themselves in those children. I think it's just a question of awareness raising, and I think when we did raise it with the practitioners, they were like, "Oh gosh, that's Joshua. Oh my gosh, that's so and so." So they then identified their own children, which they hadn't previously done because the practitioners self-selected the children to come into the groups.
Right, okay, I see.
I also think for those practitioners who maybe joined in the programme just out of interest without a specific understanding, I think it was a realisation. They suddenly realised more about these children and got to know these children better. And I think they realised what those children could offer, whereas perhaps they hadn't considered it before. So for some of them, it was a realisation perhaps about what these children could offer that they'd probably not had that time to engage. So I think they found it was beneficial for the children, but also beneficial for the practitioners.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got another related question, which is that did the project help to reframe the way that the children were thought about by their class members, so other children?
I've got an example from a previous iteration of the research. One little child who became very confident within the special me time. This is a early years child. The special me time program then presented something in a whole class session, and one of the other pupils said, "Who's that?" They didn't even know this child was in the classroom. So it was the realization then with the other children that this child was actually somebody who was going to be a vocal child within the classroom. So I think, yes, in that case, that's how that child was then sort of the realization that yes, they were a member of their class.
Interesting. I mean, some people are asking where they can find out more information about the interventions, but presumably they can find that in the report, can they?
Yeah, we've got the report. Obviously, I think it's in the public domain now. Luke will be able to answer that one. But also the fact that we are very aware of this this needs to be longitudinal research. We were only researching for this project for a very small scale of time, and we would very much love to go back and track the children that we've looked at in all of these iterations of the research. I guess that's us looking for further funding to carry on with this.
Because somebody's asking, actually, do you know about whether these children who participate in the intervention, whether they continue to make progress, or
well, we would hope so, but we haven't. Obviously, we're not there. We're not there researching it at the moment.
Okay, I'm interested. I think it's very what you said at the beginning about quietness being something that is a virtue and something that is good. I do wonder what your thoughts are around the new curriculum for Wales, because obviously that has a kind of imagines types of children, and I just am kind of curious about your thoughts about that. Do you recognise the children that you work with in the types of children that are imagined by the curriculum for Wales?
I think the idea of Cynefin and belonging, and I think that the children within the special me time, the quality me time groups, we know this from our baselines, they had so much better self-esteem and better self-confidence at the end of a very short program. We're talking 6 weeks, 1 hour per week. So if it can make that much difference in that shorter time, then those children can go on to be really competent and confident learners. Not that they're not competent, they are, but they go on and be more confident, because I think the way that we organise school, it's always the children, the vocal ones, the ones that put their hands up, are the ones that listen to. So I think it's just that idea of flipping it a little bit, and if you know you've got quiet and shy and anxious children in your classroom, have some kind of phone a friend or some way that they can, because it's all about them it's the access for them. They need those little pipelines to get into conversations, to get into activities, to get into, and that's really what that is, to be honest. I don't know, Rhiannon, if you've got any thoughts there about the curriculum.
No, I agree. I think it's about about gathering the voices of all children and maybe facilitating that for those who perhaps are less confident in speaking in front of the whole class, and thinking about ways of making sure that everybody is included in that process.
I mean, somebody's commenting here, which is a very pertinent comment, I think, that we might need to get better at looking at other languages that quiet children choose to use, and that might be kind of unspoken ways of communicating.
Absolutely. So again,
look at that.
Yeah, 100%. It's a responsive teacher. That teacher would know that child. Perhaps they was, shriveling in their chair or whatever their body language is, meaning that they want to say something, but they haven't got the tools or the skills to access that conversation. So yeah, it's just that awareness is really, really important.
And verbal language is definitely not the kind of medium that some children are swimming in, is it? They're definitely taking in the world and engaged and communicating, but not necessarily through verbal language. But yeah, so I've got another question here. This probably will be our final question. So can we get access to the slides for today's presentations after the event? So I think what's going to happen with the slides is that they will be posted. So yes, I think you can have access to the slides. I think that's right. And they'll be posted on this overview page. Yeah, they'll be put on the hub. Sorry, they'll be put on the hub. So I think we're probably going to finish there. I'll make it 4:35.